Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We've got an amazing piece of content ready to go in a few seconds. It's Alex Bogusky and David Droga here to support the Advertising and Design Club of Canada. I was so fortunate a few days ago to spend 2 hours with these guys, and really I was a fly in the wall. I'd throw out a question and we would jump all over the place. It was just so much fun to watch. The biggest challenge really for myself and the editor was how do we take 2 hours of footage and put it into 1 hour? And these guys were originally scheduled to spend an hour with us, but they gave us 2 hours of their time. And it was really fun to watch the mutual admiration that they both had for each other. You could tell these guys had been on a ride together. They helped literally shape the industry. And so you could just tell there was a lot of mutual respect and love. Hope you enjoy the segment. And Alex and David, if you guys are watching this, thank you so much for everything you've done for the craft in our industry over the years and for helping to support the Advertising and Design Club of Canada. Hi everyone, welcome to the ultimate all-nighter for the ADCCs. I'm here with two legends of advertising, Alex Bogusky and David Droga, who are here to help us save the ADCCs. Welcome guys. I've petitioned the Canadian government to get you an honorary citizenship. What do you think?
Like that's a very big deal right now.
Well, ask me about that and I'll tell you whether I want it. You know, it's funny. I don't think that I'm a very intimidating person. I don't want to be, but I feel like I'm a very direct person. And as I said, I always dilute it down to the essence of something is, why would anyone give a shit about this? Like, why would the people that you're aiming us at give a shit about this? Not do I like it personally. I mean, even though you sort of sometimes want to know if you like it, but not like, is it funny or is it clever? Or is it the newest thing of it? I was just like, the intended audience, why would they give a shit? And I feel like if that was a starting place, then you were on your way to something. And then after if I agreed that it's something that people would give a shit about and it answered the need, then you start to put on the layers of like, how you make it great and all that sort of stuff. So I talk very basically, you know what I mean? But also I don't have time to sort of make people feel good by sort of pretending I like something either, because that's a disservice to everyone. I like people to know what I think. I like to hear what they think, but I also like them to know why I don't like something, not just yes or no. I'm not a yes or no person, because I think as a creative leader, that's not enough. People have to learn from you. They have to learn from your opinion, so they can sort of formulate their own. But I don't know. I'd like to think that I haven't changed. Maybe my ambitions, I challenge people's ambitions. I'm like, people are paying us a lot of money to come up with ideas and solutions. If they want us just to push repeat, they can pay someone half the money to do what they already want. So I like people to have a knowledge of the industry, but we're not an agency that has, I don't even know if we have any award annuals in our office from anywhere. And it's not that I don't have a rear vision mirror to appreciate some of the best stuff that's ever been done, but I don't want it to be a replica of it.
I'm like David. I like to think that I'm the nicest guy, but I hear these stories about what it's like to present to me, and they come back over the ages, and they're not untrue, And so I'm trying to get. Here's the first thing: you're sitting there, and believe it or not, if you're a creative and you're going into David's office, you're going into my office, going into your office, you are praying that there's something good in the pile. You're never in the mood you're in has nothing to do with whether you buy or don't buy. The mood you're in is really how good the pile is, And so like people try to time it like, oh, he's in a good mood, just go in now. And like, there is no way to game the system. You've done it so many times, you know what a good idea looks like, the beginnings of a good idea. And it is about something that like, ask yourself over and over and over, why would anybody give a fuck? Why does anybody care? Why does anybody care? Why? And ask it all the way through the process, not just before you present to David, but like, just keep as you produce it, as you edit it, always be asking that question. You can never ask that question too much. And if you're lucky, you'll have a good answer at the end and people will care. And when they care, it's a sensation. My process was like, if I get this award, things are going to change. That was sort of what was going through if I get, okay, then nothing changed. All right, I'm back at my desk and nothing's changed. If I get this award, something will change. And, eventually, I don't know at what point I realized, look, I gotta love sitting across the table from people and trying to come up with something wonderful, you know? And I've been spending all my time thinking about the reward that might come beyond that. And not awards, but just really just the finished piece was more exciting to me, and getting it into the world than like the process. Later, I backed way up, and I think I enjoyed my career much more when it was just like, hey, you know how we're sitting here and no one can think of anything? This is fucking awesome. It don't get any better than this. You better love this right now. You know, this sort of psychic pain that we're in. So but I don't try to tell anybody else, don't go through that same process. You know, hey, you can learn from me. You can skip that. You can not care about awards right now. That's ridiculous. We all, you know, go through it at whatever pace we want to or need to, really. So I like to think that I was nice, but you know, one of my best friends told me, here's one of the things you did to me. You read this idea, and you're like, this idea is so bad that it makes me mad. Like, I'm angry now that I've read this, right? And I said, this paper deserved better than this. So take it back and someday bring it back. And they did. They kept it in a drawer. And when they had a killer idea, they put it on. And sure enough, it was an amazing idea. I read the idea. They're like, flip it over. And I flipped it over, and like, that was that idea that you hated, that you made us like do something nicer to that piece of paper. So that's pretty mean. And that's a pretty asshole-ish thing to do.
For the right reasons. It wasn't to be mean.
No, it wasn't to be mean.
It was in support of trying to get to an idea. And I feel like that's the thing. Like, as long as what you're doing is in service of trying to get to greatness, then I think it's fine. It doesn't mean you're exploiting it. You know, I've always said, you know, people have heard me say this, it takes as much energy to try and create something great as it does to justify something average.
Yes.
So the same fucking energy to trying to do something great.
Yeah. And I've always said trying to make an average idea great is nearly impossible and takes an unlimited amount of time. Trying to make, you know, so start with a great idea.
But I think the thing is, yeah, I would never get in an argument about it, because
Right.
I would always respectfully want to hear someone's point of view. But at the end of the day, I never hit from the fact that if it's going to come down to an opinion and a subjective opinion, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to trust myself. And even if I make the wrong decision, like if I pick something that turns out to be a load of shit, as long as I own that as well, that's what I always said. I was like, there's not many things in life that I'm as confident as I am in my creative judgment. Doesn't mean I'm always right, but
yeah,
I would always bet on myself. But I would always own the fuck ups too.
So if you could go back to your younger selves back in 1990 and tell them what the future of advertising would be like 30 years later, what would you say to a young Bogusky, a young Droga?
I just think everyone who predicts the future is always wrong. So I wouldn't try to predict the future. I've never tried to predict the future. I think if you can think about 15 minutes into the future, you've got everybody so beat. Because people don't even know where we are now. People don't act on where we are now. David's nodding a little bit. And I think that, you know, he's probably used that in his career as a secret sauce. I know I did. It's like, just work in the now, maybe 15 minutes from now, and you will do very well.
What about you, David? If you went back to young you?
Well, there's lots of that. I mean, I get sad when I think of young me because of all the reasons that, you know, you wish you'd appreciated what you had and what you could do and all that. But I think I was just grateful at that period of time that I was being paid to think of things. You know, that thought that any client would tolerate me sitting around thinking of ideas when they would pay for it to be made was exciting and exhilarating. So I didn't even project, to Alex's point, like, this is going to lead to this, this is going to lead to this, this is going to lead to this. The only difference was, you know, I, as an Australian, you know, I knew that whatever my ambitions were, whatever canvases I wanted to play, I had to look beyond Australia. I mean, I'm very patriotic, I love Australia. You know, Alex was born where they were born on the main stage. He just had to conquer the main stage. I knew I had to go out to find more. And as an Australian, you grow up being massively influenced by two very different things. You get by British sensibilities and by American sensibilities. And I tried to sort of get the best of both. But Alex's point, I don't think anyone's can predict the future. Like the now that's actually what most people miss, is the now.
Yeah.
Like crazy. Like, it's so funny when you even topical things now, people are like, oh, that's so on point. How do they get the sense of what's going on now? And you're like, isn't that their job? When 98% of the stuff is cookie cutter or reflective of what was good maybe 6 months ago or 5 years ago. And it's, I don't know. So it's, maybe I'm too short-sighted, or I'm just myopic about what's in front of me right now. Because that's the best. That's that Bezos quote, isn't it? Like, you know, everyone's always trying to predict what's going to be you in 5 years. And he says, I'm trying to predict what's going to be the same in 10.
Subservient Chicken opened a door to use the web in a different way. And then the tap water project, I remember when I read about that, blew my mind. It's like just a totally different way of approaching things. In a weird way, do we have the two of you to blame for the dreaded case study?
I mean, I don't know if David wants to take, I will take full blame, because we were making these things and we had no way to enter them. And so we developed the video and, you know, said, we'll have to explain this thing in a video, and that's how we'll enter these things. Because they're, you know, they aren't one thing, they're 15 components that all interlock. And
I'll shoulder some of that responsibility too, because I know from the get-go, we were doing things that you had to explain in a way that had layers to it. And, you know, because our first thing was Mark Echo video, you know, BD thing.
Yes.
It didn't fit into any box, and I had to explain it, and you had to give the context and all that sort of stuff. And it became this thing. And remember when case studies were 5 minutes long? It became, we created these monsters that were actually important. I think we went into it with good intentions. But then I think as the industry does, it takes things and they make that thing. And it became less about the idea it was trying to explain and more about the case study. You know, because we've all watched case studies. We're like, that's a really good case study. I actually don't know what the idea was, but it was a very... But I think definitely we collectively, I know Alex, when I was admiring the work that they were doing then, it was stuff that you would look at, or internally we would think about, like, why wouldn't you do that? It just makes sense, or it could be great, as opposed to thinking, should we or could we do that? It just felt like the right thing to do, and why wouldn't you do that?
It's true. It almost felt like you, at the time when you first started to do it, you felt like you were fixing the industry, because the industry could only judge in these verticals, TV and print and posters, and integrated campaigns were the way that you actually moved culture. You know, we were always trying to mess with pop culture. So, you know, you can never do that with one note.
But also at the same time, we're also lucky that we came in an industry at the time where the levers we could pull were not, you know, the power of those weren't dictated by the size of the clients we had or the budgets we had or the media budgets. You know what I mean? Like, it used to be the hierarchy of advertising was we had huge budgets or TV, and suddenly what the web did, and just also what pop culture, understanding pop culture did, it allowed you to be like, actually, you know what? It doesn't matter what the budget is. It's just the ambition and the relevance of the thing. And suddenly it allowed agencies like ours to go from a standing start to being competitive at any level. And that was such a blessing for us. Obviously we had to deliver on that, and there was always the pressure to do that, but we weren't pigeonholed as a boutique.
But it was very, you could feel the playing field leveling, right? And actually almost felt like you had an advantage because you were younger, you were nimbler, you were growing up with the web, and you had all this competition that honestly just didn't even want to interact. Like I never wanted to do anything other than interact. You know, I'm a huge fan of Gossage, and like he used to use coupons to try to interact and have conversations. He would have people call them, you know, and that was always what turned me on, was like, how can I actually have some sort of conversation that goes back and forth as quickly as possible with a customer? I didn't really know whether that was advertising or not. And at the time, you know, people were like, how could Subservient Chicken work? Why would someone going to a website do anything for a brand? And I couldn't even understand the question. Like, how can sitting for 30 seconds of a commercial do anything for, they're the same thing, but people didn't understand that they were the same thing. And back then the internet was so new. It's hard for young people to imagine this, but there were only 3 good things a week that hit the internet. And so microsites were kind of amazing. You could just like be one of the 3 to 5 decent things that was going to happen that week, and you'd pop. I think phenomenons are a thing that happen that you don't control. If so, everyone would say, I think I'll make 1984 this year and I'm going to do Subservient Chicken. Like there's a certain zeitgeist that you just hit the sweet spot and something happens. And David's experienced that. But we were doing many of those kinds of things, probably in our minds just as good for different clients, from bike clients to truth. And that was just the one that for whatever reason, probably because it leaned into like porn culture online, you know, it also we had to code a lot of dirty words in it. And that became a thing, like, oh, they've got all this code for dirty words, because we had to know when people were asking for something naughty and he could go, no, no, no.
I do remember that. I remember that one when it came out in our office.
Yeah.
He was playing with it and we wanted to catch you out. We were like, oh, do this, doesn't do that. Is it? And it was just one of those things where every so often in our industry, there are things that open the aperture for everybody that you're like, oh, I didn't realize we could do that. And, you know, part of our thing.
We didn't realize we could do it either. When we were building it, we weren't sure, but, you know, it had 500 commands in there. And we asked over and over as many people as possible. And we never, at a certain point, no one asked a new thing. People think they're so special. I'm going to stump it. I'm going to ask it to make a sandwich. I'm going to ask it to play baseball. But we kind of knew what all the questions, which is weird and a little sad because human beings are probably coded.
But I think the thing is, we never made things thinking about what it was doing for the industry, or like, honestly, the amount of times we sold things where we would walk out of the meeting because we would present it really believing it was the right thing to do. And then they would, if they approved it, we'd come out of it going, oh, how are we going to make that? How are we going to, from a tech side, you know, it's not just from TAP Project, from the Million, the Board of Education and things like we were always like, what are we going to do? And also we had the advantage where we didn't have so many layers of very responsible, smart people who find reasons not to do things. You know what I mean? There's so many agencies are filled with good things, but their job is to find reasons for things not to happen. And particularly when there's creative leadership of a company, it's not that it's irresponsible. It's not that we don't give a shit or we just maverick for the sake of it, but you're trying to do something that you really believe in. And good, you know, the will and talent and sweat and all that will just finds a way. Like great ideas just find a way of happening. And also they attract great partners that make it happen. And that's been the most exciting part for me in this whole journey. Pulling off things that, as we say, you know, at a benchmark, we've always tried to do stuff that's, you know, at the highest level of the industry. And if we can, try and do a few things that help redefine the industry. You know, like that's grand ambitions to have, but we've always tried to do that. But it's not written on a brief. It's just more, how do you give creatives the freedom to think that they can think like that?
I did always like kind of, you know, jerking with the industry, I have to admit. And I found it first challenging, and then I found it almost disappointingly easy. But it was a little bit of fun, and it was a little bit of a game. But David, I just want to say, you meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of great people in advertising, but we wanted to do the thing that was going to work for the client. We were not looking for a client to fund some creative project that we had, or some short film that we'd always wanted to make. We never did that stuff. We never had a script that we presented more than once. We never had scripts come out of, you know, drawers that could be used against 4 different clients. Like, and I just got the sense in a very short meeting with David, I'm like, that dude is, I call it for real. Like, and obviously you are very, very for real, probably the most real, but it was very obvious to me. And, so I just want to say that, because I'd never told you that.
Should you guys high five each other, guys? Should we do a little high five virtually? Way to go.
I mean, maybe I didn't have your confidence against the industry as much. Like, I never wanted to really fuck with the industry. I think because I was a foreigner coming in, I didn't have that thing. I always thought, secretly, I've always wanted to push up and fuck with the holding companies a little bit, because I wanted to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess as an outsider coming in, I was always conscious that I was sort of getting away with building this company.
I always felt like an outsider too. I know, like, within America, it seems like one thing, but Miami, there were not good agencies, and no one looked for an agency nationally south of Atlanta. You'd always stop your search. No one went down the peninsula. I felt very much the same way you did, where somewhat trapped. and, you know, living in a land where I was never going to be able to like get to where, you know, I had some inkling of an aspiration. I wouldn't say I had a lot of aspiration or a lot of drive, really. I think I just enjoyed doing the work. I like being around smart people doing things that are fun. And just if you do a lot of that and you commit to it, the other stuff just came. But then at some point when you feel the momentum, then you start to think, oh, what should we do and what would we do? And my thing was always, what did I want to do when I was 12 years old with a company? Because that's probably what I should do. So definitely put in the fire poles and like all the things that I think 12-year-olds know everything, and they haven't been corrupted yet by what's possible.
Alex, how did you deal with, you know, coming back? The industry's changed a lot. You being Alex and being tough on the work, how did it go over with teams today?
I didn't want to really like get into being a creative director again. I had zero ambitions in that space. I do have ambitions around mentoring, and I enjoy that and tried to stick with that.
When I heard you were coming back, I was like, what? No!
Yeah.
No! Not because I want you to come back because you're a spectacular industry. But I was like, you had the Hollywood ending. Like, you fucking created this juggernaut that defined stuff and was such a big competitor. And you went out in the Hollywood way. And when you came back, I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. I had a lot of advice like that too. But I just don't think of life that way. I don't think anyone's going to remember me. We're all going to be dust. I don't feel like I have a legacy. And so to mess up the advertising legacy, it was not instrumental in my decision. I very, very much believe that creativity and testing should be the best buddies. You know, they're one and the same. They go together, and we haven't figured out a way as an industry. Clients don't do it right. You know, the bigger the client, the worse they do it, I think, in general. You know, where you see it working is actually small companies who are kind of doing all their own stuff in-house. They're doing very iterative, you know, constant real world testing against actual customer bases like that. And it works. And guess what? Their work is really fun. It breaks through, you know. We do know, I mean, I'm confident that there are a group of people that wish creativity didn't matter, but it matters a lot. It is like the only way to make your money work harder. We just haven't gotten good at proving it.
I just have to pause 1 second. It's starting to rain here, so I'm going to turn this off.
Okay.
I'll join you back. I'll come back in 1 minute.
Okay, we'll wait for you, Dave.
Bitch about me while I'm gone.
Okay, standing by.
You talked earlier about being wrong. Someone presents a concept and you go, maybe I was wrong, or maybe. What is wrong? What is right? Because there's two schools of thought. There's a school of thought that what is wrong is it didn't work, which I personally believe in. There's another school of creatives that think, well, you said it wasn't right, but it when it can. Just love to hear your thoughts.
Again, we're in the business of being in business for our clients. We're in the business of being creative for our clients or for the causes we are pushing behind. You know, as I said, winning at Cannes is a great validation if it's done something great. If it is the end goal, then the whole industry is hollow beyond measure. You know what I mean? So for me, wrong is if it served no purpose except for yourself. So if I don't do work that works, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't pay my growing agency with Can Lions and One Show pencils.
No,
you know, I can't pay my real estate with some D&AD pencils.
I think if you're young and you're listening to David right now, you probably didn't hear what he said. But when you can align what you want with what your client wants, which is they want sales, and you can align your creativity in generating that, you will sell everything and your career will go crazy. When those things are not aligned because you want to make a little something you think is cute or funny, or this is a joke I've been waiting to tell on TV for 5 years, that misalignment is a misalignment that's going to affect your entire career. But no one hears this. You know, I say it, no one hears this.
True. But you see it, like I'll pick one of your, old clients. You guys redefined Domino's. Like you changed the business of Domino's Pizza, right? You guys did great work, great ideas, like outrageous things, fun things, and all that sort of stuff. It worked its ass off. Their stock price, it's just like, that's where I'm like, isn't that the ultimate prize? Is something where the client loves you, they trust you. Trust is the one thing, because it's an intimidating thing to be a client. You have to buy something subjective where they spend millions of dollars. And I've always had a respect for the person on the other side of the table, not me thinking, oh, fuck, they're an idiot, or I'm going to try and get one over them. I'm like, they're in a tough situation. So I've got to make it as easy for them to understand why I'm trying to convince them to do this thing, why it's right for them, not for me. And so then they'll trust me.
You say they're under more pressure. They are under way more pressure. Like, I'm not going to get fired. David's not going to get fired. They are absolutely target on their back if they're a CMO. How long does the average CMO even last, right? But having that empathy really helps you navigate in a way where, and it's not a trick, it's just the empathy allows you to do the work that's right for them and their situation, and their company is going to make it all the way through and get sold. And pop culture is going to turn its head and look at that thing and say, wow. And your mom's going to know that you did it because her friend brought it up at a card game, and and then by the time you get to Cannes, it's already famous. It's already going to win. It's not even a question by the time Cannes comes around.
That's a good point. Like, there's actually, in an industry that is filled with validation points, and again, it's been better to two of us than almost anybody. Nothing is more satisfying than when a client tells you how great it has done for their business or the challenge, or when people who are not in advertising, not your peers, know of something that you created. They may not even know that you did it.
Right.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
I think the number one thing that's holding industry back is the industry has forgotten its place and its power that it has. It's so on the back foot, and it's put itself on the back foot by being run by less advertising. A lot of the people who are running the biggest companies don't love advertising, don't love the power of advertising, don't respect the power of creativity. They've sort of turned it into a numbers game, an acquisition game. And I think that changed the posture of the industry. And then suddenly, when clients are deciding to go with one corporation based on how much they'll reduce their fees versus how big their ideas are, or, or the efficiencies they bring, then that changes the fundamental nature of the industry. And then clients start not trusting the agencies. So it's just this vicious cycle. That's not to say it's not filled with some exceptionally bright people, but it's no coincidence that the industries and brands that have had the most impact and continue to have the most momentum are led by people who love the industry and who love what it can do. And that's from the Widens, who've held on to this for 35 years, to the Crispins, to the Drogas, to, I feel like these are people who, yes, we love being creative, but we actually believe in the industry.
I have probably just one thought, which is, having watched us lose a lot of pitches just recently, your pitch rate is, people think new business starts when they need new business. New business starts when you're producing the work for a new client. That first campaign you're producing for a new client, if you get that right, it needs to satisfy what the client's needs are, but it also wants to satisfy the zeitgeist of the coming 12 months in a way that is going to be an amazing case history that's going to pull in new business. This is crass, but when you're really hot, you can serve up a steaming plate of poop, and you'll get the business. And then later you better fix it, obviously, because you don't, stuff's got to work. But when you're cold, man, you're just going in cold. So that's one thing I would say is, know that new business is when you're working on the business you have. It's not when you need business.
Sincerity goes so much further than anything else, right? Like, if you are passionate, you believe in something when you're presented, and not just you present it with gusto, but like you really believe in it. You may stumble along through it, you may fuck up a little bit.
Doesn't matter.
Like, they get excited because they're like, wow, this fucking person. Versus, you know, people that rehearse things to an inch of their life, and it's like da-da-da, and it just feels so saccharine.
Yeah.
And that's where the clients are just ticking boxes, you know what I mean? And yes, look, that still works for some clients who are ticking boxes, but people are human, right? And they want to get caught up in the potential of something. They want to be excited about something. And they're thinking about not just, do they make that ad? They're thinking, do they keep their job? Is there something they're excited about being part of? Can they work with you?
Yeah.
What are they going to be like when it's good? What are they going to be like when it's bad? And this is probably the most exciting part of their job.
It is absolutely. I'm sure I've like after doing it for a while, and then it is for the CMO and pretty much everyone there. It is the best thing they get to do. The rest of what we don't realize, the rest of what they do is awful and so tedious.
They're talking about the supply chain, and they're talking about, I mean, things that are important, but they're not making them smile or get excited about stuff, right? And our industry is all about, yes, it's about effectiveness, but it's all about the potential of things. And I'm going to go way back to something we talked about in the beginning. Like, when I hear an idea that I like, or if it's an idea I've had that I'm excited by or that I like, or if someone presents me an idea that I like, my immediate reaction is not euphoria and fireworks and excitement and all that. So my immediate reaction is almost anger, because I'm suddenly almost angry that this is not in the world yet. And I'm worried about what's going to fucking prevent it from happening. I'm like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. If this doesn't fucking happen, I'm going to be so mad. What do I have to do to make sure this happens? What do I have to do? You know, like, so it's not this is going to be the best thing ever. We're going to be great. And I'm like, fuck if that doesn't happen. Now that I know that that could exist, we have to do everything in our power to make that exist.
Pitching is where you, as a company, advertising agencies don't have an actual R&D department, but pitching is the closest thing you have to R&D, where you can really let completely loose. And you should be playing that loose. And, you know, if you're lucky, you don't care if you get it. You just want to do the right thing and the best, very rightest thing. And so we had sort of lost that, I think, sharpest tool in our toolkit in a way. And so we decided to start pitching again. That was our experience with it.
To Alex's point, I definitely agree. I actually like pitching.
I do too.
It's an environment where you have diplomatic immunity and nobody knows. It's like going on a first date, right? Everything's going to be wonderful. You don't know everyone's bad things, right? And you also, if you're really confident, you're really putting, you know, we go into pitches honestly presenting what we think is the right thing, even if they laugh us out of the room. But so we always go into it not thinking, what are we going to do just to win? That's not our thinking. Our thinking is, what do we really think they should do to answer their briefs? And more times than not, that helps us win the business. But there are some times where it's just so far out of their range or their threshold of taste. And our CFO at the time, about a year later, did this very blatantly obvious thing. He worked out how many pitches we won when we were paid to pitch, when we were not paid to pitch, and when we declined pitching. And when we weren't paid to pitch, we were winning about 25%. When we were paid to pitch, we were winning about 60%. And when we declined pitching, about 50% of those clients came back to us and gave us the business. And it was so telling to me, because I felt like, and still to this day, like, I like pitching. I won't pitch if you don't pay us. Because if you pay us something, it's not even about how much. If you're paying us 500 grand or 10 grand, whatever the number is, you'll fucking listen to every word we're saying. Because when you're paying for something, you suddenly really want to hear it and you really want to absorb it.
You clearly value it.
Yeah, there's a value thing. I just want them to know that we're not just one of 20 people.
Let me ask you this. How do you want to be remembered? Or do you care?
I do care. Well, it's funny you say that. I want to be remembered as someone that cared. That's my thing. Like, I want people to know that I cared about everyone I worked with, everything I touched, and everything I tried to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is a genuine thing. And that's the advice I give my kids still to this day. Is like, and I did in my CAN speech, was just find the thing you care about and you'll give it everything you got. It's just finding that thing that matters.
Alex, how do you want to be remembered?
I mean, I kind of touched on it before. I don't really think much about, I don't think I will be remembered. So it's a hard thing to think about how I will not be remembered.
I'll remember.
How would you like to, well, that's saying that I'm going to outlive you. So I'll have to remember you. All I really want is be remembered one day longer than David. That's all I want. Yeah. Does that make you feel better?
No, that hurts. Now I've got something to aim for. No, I was going to say, like, I agree with Alex in the sense that, look, it is only advertising, but at the same time, I do believe that I don't look at it as, oh, I want to be remembered as an advertising person. I want to be remembered as a creative person. And if that gets passed down through my kids and other people, we're just one of the cogs that helps creativity flourish through generations, and that would be a great thing. Just one of, I'm not overstepping the mark and assuming we had more contribution than we did, but I feel like keeping the creative flame alive for the time that we were around, I feel proud of that. I'd like to feel that,
And I want you to be brutally honest. When you think of Canadian advertising, does any work come to mind?
Well, we all know Canadian people are the funniest people. You have all the comedians, so there's a lot of good Canadian creatives, obviously, probably for the same reasons. I don't know why you're funny. Obviously, there's some...
I'm not funny.
There's some deep-seated pain culturally that we don't totally understand that's like generating the comedy. But, we're willing to exploit it here in the United States to make TV shows and advertising for sure.
Any traits, Dave, that come to mind with any Canadian creatives you've worked with?
I think that you have a lot like Australians in the fact that you are influenced by different sensibilities. Like, you're North American, but you're not American. So you can sort of dip in and dip out of the best and worst. Great work that comes out of that. And also, like smaller markets, sometimes you have the limitations of not the budgets and stuff, that forces you to be a little bit more ambitious or a little bit more lateral. So there's always a piece of work that comes out that you're like, I'm terrible at sort of knowing who did what exactly, but there's always some campaigns that'll come out that you'll be like, oh my God, that's such a clever, I remember that. Now I'm aging myself, but there was like that, the cereal, it was the diamond thing by just turning it.
Diamond Charity.
It's great. Or there was that Viagra one where it had the people, curing antiquing and all that sort of stuff, or whatever. Like, there's always some things that come out. You're like, just funny. It's on point.
I think, David, you felt like an outsider. I always felt like an outsider. And then, one of the things we explored when we were interviewing was always if someone was, for some reason, an outsider. Military kids tended to do really well if you grew up in Germany, but you were American. I think, you mentioned it with Canada, you're looking at the US, but you're kind of you become a student of pop culture because you've got this distance. And maybe American pop culture or I think once you're a student of pop culture, you can turn that sort of to look anywhere. And so there's probably, I think if you're a Canadian creative, you're probably going to want to use that to come to the US though. And then really, don't stay in Canada. I'm kidding. What's the answer? What's the answer that could get me a visa? So that I can come live or stay or live, or maybe even some sort of citizenship thing.
We will get you the citizenship, I promise.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Sometime around November, I haven't pinpointed exactly when.
What is the trait you had as young creatives to get to where you are that your peers didn't have?
Well, I can't speak what my peers didn't have, but I've always been very obsessive about wanting to I'm a hard worker, and I just think a lot about creative. I love mental exercise of trying to solve things. And I was never caught up in having to play by anyone else's rules or move up the hierarchy the official way. I was like, you know what, fuck it. I just want to have impact, do it at my own speed. Maybe because I was the youngest of five, I got 4 older brothers and 2 younger sisters, that I was so competitive. I always wanted to do things in a rush. So I just sort of moved up, and I was just always pushing. And but I don't know, just worked my ass off, and I had a lot of fun. And I'm not a political person, but I was also I'm just direct person. I don't know. It's very hard to know, actually.
Alex, what about you? What would you say the traits you had that got you to where you are?
Sometimes people, you just get hit by the lucky train, and then later you try to look at it as, oh, I was so smart to do this, and I was smart to do that, and I worked hard enough to get this to happen and stuff. But you know, there's definitely some luck. You know, you like David probably can think about his career, like these certain things that happened that just felt like, wow, thank goodness that happened, or wow, what a break that was when that happened. And so
and there's always some people that along your journey like opened a door for you, and you might not realize at the time, or they might have realized at the time, but like I can still to this day, I know the people that validated me or supported me when others weren't ready to do that. And I'm like, fuck. To your thing about luck, like had that person not opened the door for me to try and prove myself in that thing, like what would I be doing? Or if I had have got that first job that I didn't get, like that could have shot me off in another way. And we're so lucky that we, not only the world opened up for us, we're lucky that people helped us do that. And we're lucky that the timing of things. And then now there's a question of we also filled the spaces we were given.
Right. I don't know what else to call that. That's luck. And then, you know, you wind up realizing that, oh, if I do this, if I do it here, it's no good. If I do it here, it's really good. Let me make sure that I'm doing it in the right spaces. And, you know, you begin to like evolve and move from there. So, but if you're going to do one thing, you know, David said it before, if you love advertising and there's something broken about you, the way something's broken about David and Zach and me, like if you have that broken thing, you can do it harder and more than most people. And that's going to really serve you. If, you know, there are people who are really so creative and you work with them, but they just don't love it. And the people that love it just hand them their lunch day in and day out, even though they have less talent. Ultimately, it's going to be how hard you grind.
Yeah. Can I be honest with you guys? I think you're too kind and generous, and I think the truth is.
Well, wait, we opened up with we're not that kind and generous, and stories of people. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think you guys manufactured your luck. Yes, there was an element of luck for everybody, but truth is, people that get to the level you're at manufacture through the decision making you make, and I really think you guys deserve all the accolades and all the success you've had.
You know what it is? It's just read that book, The Secret, right? And all of it's in there. Just practice that.
Well, there's no simple answer for that. It's not just like yes or no. I mean, I feel like we're 1 year into it. We all benefit by knowing more about what we don't know. And it goes back to Alex's comments right at the beginning about research, right? Like, I'm not so arrogant as to think that my creativity should be in a vacuum. You know what I mean? I want to know what I don't know, and I want to know what moves people. I want to know what resonates with people and what people are doing. And if the data tells me that this is actually how people live their lives or don't, or do, like, I want to know that. Now, how I interpret that, that's where the creativity of what we do comes into it. And I feel like our industry needs to have more depth and girth to it. It's not in lieu of creativity. Like, I think everybody feels like we have to choose. Oh, if you're embracing data, you must hate creativity. I'm like, why? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm just a greedy creative who wants to have as much impact as possible. So if I can have friends in high places that do stuff that I just can't do, that I can use to my own advantage or to the advantage of my clients, and I'm going to do that. And I wasn't scared of, you know, I'm acting like we bought them, so we're sort of the tail that's wagging that dog until proven otherwise. So I just want to stay relevant. I talk a lot about that all the time. Like, to be relevant to our clients, we have to do stuff that works, and we have to understand how the world works. But it's not in lieu of creativity. I'm arrogant enough, maybe that's the thing, or naive enough to just assume that we're better with it.
There's bad tests. Focus groups often supports the worst work. You know, other kinds of testing might be middling somewhere. You know, there's times I like Millward Brown and you can game it and stuff. And so if you know how to play it, you can make it work, but it's a little goofy, you know. But real people in a real situation, a real audience watching a Marvel film, they're either laughing or they're not. Like, you know, they're not trying not to laugh.
That's the thing. They've got real-time research that actually affects the output. But if research works, let's just assume the majority of stuff that goes on TV is researched. What's the excuse for most of the stuff on TV being horrendous? You know,
because it's bad research.
bad research.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing I think when I see a terrible ad on TV, I think two things. I'm like, that went through research, probably. How? And then I'm always thinking, I should hire the account person that sold that. Because if they can sell that shit, they can sell anything.
So Dave, something we've been thinking about at Zulu, trying to team up the data person with a writer and art director.
I mean,
are you guys doing it now?
Well, we have a lot of data people in our office. Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily that the team is sitting, you know, in a little trifecta like that, but there's definitely interaction. It's not a linear thing anymore. It used to be, our industry used to be so linear where you would start with the brief and then it would be given to just a creative team and you'd pick up passengers on the way like a train. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
now time for production and we get the production person and then we get the, and I feel like it's almost flip of that where we start with everybody on the fucking train and we throw off people when they're not needed. You know what I mean?
It's a good analogy.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting idea though, Zach, because it reminds me a little bit of the early days of the internet where, you know, we went from having internet experts that were separate buildings, you know, then you kind of, people were bringing them in and then you integrated them into the team, right? And then everyone just was native. And I think data might go through the same process. You may want to, you know, push people into the teams, and maybe like specifically in the creative teams, just try it. I wouldn't be afraid to try it.
Well, I definitely see myself doing something creative no matter what happens, you know, and I didn't sell to cash out. You know, I sort of sold a minority share to William Morris Endeavour about 5 years ago. And then obviously we sold the majority to Accenture last year. But as I said, I did it because I thought it was sort of a pathway to the future for where the industry is going. That was beyond me. That doesn't mean I'm looking to sort of exit, but it sort of I believe it will inoculate us for a little bit for the future. But I feel like my heart of hearts, I like working. I like working with interesting people and creative people. And I like doing stuff that has a positive impact. So no matter what happens, whether in the future, I'm going to be doing something creative. I want to prove this model out. And then if the right time happens or it's something like that, but I'm not a retiring type. I'm not going to sit on a boat or an island. That's just not who I am. I like to talk shit with people and conspire and think of things and bend stuff and break stuff and laugh and cry. And that's, you know, that's the privilege of being a creative person, right? Is once you're creative, you can't switch. You can't turn that switch off.
I already retired, unretired, re-retired. Like I've probably had more retirement than career at this point. So I'm a very retiring type. You know, I had my New Year's resignation, I called it. I'm very comfortable with I don't know, chilling, I think.
You have your fingers in lots of pies, though.
I got stuff that I'm doing. But I don't want to headline anything. You know, I like being more of a behind the scenes person. I think that I did it. And David, you know, like people probably maybe they don't. Did anyone ever criticize you online? Do you ever read things that hurt your feelings? Like, you know,
I'm sure they do, but I don't read it, but I'm sure they do.
You're so smart. 'Cause I read it and it was very painful. And people don't mean it to be painful and they don't know, I don't think. Or some maybe do. But anyway, being in front of the organization and being kind of the face of an organization, that was very tactical. Like you know, I started moving to the front. My partner started to get a little bit like nose out of joint about it. And I said, you take it. Like, who wants to do it? I don't really like doing it. Who wants to be the face? They're like, no, you do it. And so I kept going with it. And Chuck Porter, you know, early on wanted to take some chips off the table. So we wound up selling very early in our thing. And then we had a long earn out that like we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Spent 2 years working on climate with Al Gore, setting up, you know, rebranding his thing and then setting up an internal agency for him. And we're lucky in this business. Well, lucky if you have ADD. You work on a zillion things all the time. Doing the same thing every day was not a perfect design for me. I went from that into a lot of angel investing and advising with companies. I was like, I started working with Lyft when they were 5 people, and my first visit with them, I actually helped them put together an IKEA table. I remember I was underneath the table, like screwing it together. So very small company at the time. I've done a bunch of like, angel investing, advising, have a small venture capital firm, and I do that. And it's enough, it's enough, but it's also gives me like a lot of free time. I really like riding my bike. I'm pretty fucking simple. Like if I could ride my bike, everyone knows I'm going to be happy for the rest of the day. It's not much else he's going to need. So ride my bike, do help out some with some causes here and there, and just try to stay in the background of things. Twice a week, my son and I go out and donate hours out there. And so right before this, I was pulling up carrots and do you farm carrots?
We have a huge veggie garden. We also we tap maple trees. We make maple syrup. No offense to Canada.
I'm not offended at all, man.
Carrots are funny. I'm just going to say, as a creative guy, my favorite thing are all the carrots that come out that have like hit a rock and they go kind of crazy. They get like, alien arms and stuff, and you never see them at the grocery store. And then a lot of them wind up sort of X and R rated kind of carrots. And so I've been photographing some of the dirtier, nastier carrots.
That's a great example of our industry creativity. Wasn't there an advertising person in Paris or somewhere that created that word? Because what they used to do is they used to throw all those carrots out.
Yeah.
And then someone said, why don't you just, now you know how you can buy baby carrots?
Uh-huh.
They're all the ugly carrots, just
chopped up. Yeah.
An agency that said that.
Oh, really?
Like, just again, like a great idea can affect anything, even ugly carrots.
And is there going to be places where like you're going to come in and go, this kind of content isn't going to come for free? Give now, or like what's this telethon
there's
like?
There's going to be the PBS lady, and she's going to be crying, going, "Please give, please give."
$5,000 does not come along every day to Channel 17.
We have a host that's going to be up for 24 hours. We've got the president of the club who's going to be reading at 3 in the annual to fall asleep, and he's going to volunteer to have a live feed while he's sleeping and reading the annual to his kids.
Do you want to hear about branded content, singular campaign?
So that's why I wanted to say no. It's because I'm not like, big on saying yes. And I was, dude, you asked, and I was trying to think of all different ways to say no. I bet David was too. I don't know if you were kind of having things typed.
I was waiting to see what you said, actually, because I was thinking, but you did have me like, it's going to fail if you don't do something for the.
So my strategy actually worked to convince David Droga. That's good.
It did work.
Your strategy was good. I didn't know how I could. One of my thoughts was, how much money do you need? Because I'll just pay for the ad club to keep going.
You need $75,000. That's what we're looking for.
Well, maybe together, David and I will cover it. But
let us know what happened.
Now it's too late. We did the video.
Seriously, Alex and David, you guys have been so generous with your time, and thank you so much to and I want to say, I know you guys will blush, but legends of the business. Yeah. This has been a pleasure. It's going to be so much fun sharing this with the rest of the industry.
Everyone's watching. Donate some fucking money.